Imagine getting T-boned at an intersection.
Oh, man.
Yeah, your car is completely totaled. You're stuck in the hospital for weeks, and, you can't even get to work.
Right. Your whole life is just put on hold.
Exactly. And the driver who hit you, they just drive away.
Wow.
Their car doesn't have a single scratch. Their insurance premiums don't go up a dime, and nobody pulls their license.
That is just, it's incredibly frustrating just thinking about it.
It is. And welcome to the deep dive, because today we are looking at why that exact infuriating scenario happens every single day in the modern workplace.
It really does.
We're exploring this highly unsettling but deeply fascinating article by Dr. Jonathan H. Westover. It's called The Accountability Gap: Why Workplace Bullies Evade Consequences.
Such an important read.
So our mission today, for you listening, is we're pulling back the curtain on this open secret. We want to know why the targets of workplace bullying often lose their livelihoods, while the bullies themselves just get a free pass.
Yeah, and we're also going to look at how some organizations are, finally figuring out how to fix this completely broken system.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the baseline reality of this problem is, it's incredibly bleak, isn't it?
It is. It really is. And we have to start with the actual data on the outcomes, because it completely shatters this cultural illusion we all kind of have.
Like workplace karma.
Exactly, workplace karma. We all want to believe that toxic behavior eventually catches up with people, right? That HR will step in and the scales will finally balance.
Right, the bad guy gets fired eventually.
But the source material highlights this massive 5-year Norwegian longitudinal study that proves otherwise.
5 years, wow. That's a huge data set.
Massive. And when researchers actually tracked workplace bullying over half a decade, the asymmetry between what happens to the victim and what happens to the perpetrator it's just staggering.
When you say asymmetry, what does that actually look like for the person being targeted? Because, we often think of bullying as just having a miserable 9 to 5.
Right, like a bad boss.
Yeah. But the data suggests it's much more destructive than just a bad day at the office.
It is systemic destruction. For the targets, the consequences are profound, lasting, and deeply material.
Like financial consequences.
Financial, professional, everything. We are looking at severe career disruption. Victims face a significantly higher risk of sudden unemployment.
Just losing their jobs entirely.
Exactly. And they experience downward career mobility, meaning they take lesser roles just to escape the situation. And in many cases, they face long-term exclusion from working life entirely.
Ways they just drop out of the workforce.
Yes, they just drop out.
Yeah.
And the health impacts are equally devastating. It's not just, dreading Monday morning.
Right.
It's elevated rates of clinical anxiety, severe depression, chronic insomnia, and actual post-traumatic stress symptoms.
The physiological toll is just wild to read about. The article mentions chronic stress from bullying literally predicting cardiovascular problems.
Yeah.
Gastrointestinal disorders, suppressed immune systems. It is physically making people sick.
The body is definitely keeping the score here.
But let's look at the other side of that crash. What did that 5-year study find out about the people driving the car? Like the self-identified bullies?
Well, this is the part that is so hard to digest. The study tracked the perpetrators alongside the victims, and the perpetrators experienced zero significant increase in their intention to leave their jobs.
Zero.
Zero. They had no extra employer changes, no jump in unemployment, and absolutely no increase in disability benefits or health-related work absences.
So absolutely no professional or physiological interruption whatsoever.
None.
They just walk away completely unscathed.
Entirely unscathed. What's fascinating here is that this asymmetry isn't just an unfortunate accident or, a glitch in the matrix.
Right.
It reveals a fundamental structural failure in organizational justice. It tells us that our corporate systems for detecting and responding to interpersonal harm, they're functioning exactly as they were built to function.
Which is to protect the institution, not the individual.
Precisely. But to truly understand how bullies manipulate these systems, we really have to define what the research actually means by workplace bullying.
That's a good point, because we do throw that word around really casually. Like someone might say, oh, my boss snapped at me in this status meeting today. He's such a bully.
Right.
But according to this research, it's a lot more specific than someone just having a bad day and taking it out on you.
Very much so. A single harsh interaction, while it might be toxic and completely unprofessional, it does not constitute bullying in the organizational psychology sense.
So what's the actual definition?
True workplace bullying requires two structural elements. The first is repetition and duration.
Okay, so it's not a one-off.
No, it's an escalating process. It is a series of negative acts that unfold deliberately over weeks, months, or even years.
That's cumulative. It's like this slow, methodical drip, drip, drip of mistreatment.
Yes, it is a campaign, not an event. And the second vital element is a power imbalance.
Meaning the victim can't fight back.
Exactly. The situation is fundamentally designed so that the target has extreme difficulty defending themselves.
Now, when we talk about power imbalances, my mind immediately goes to the formal org chart, like the tyrannical boss and the helpless subordinate.
Sure, that's the classic image.
And I know the article notes that between 10 and 15% of employees experience this, which is just a staggering chunk of the workforce.
It is a massive number of people.
It really is. And it mentions it's especially prevalent in healthcare, education, and public administration. But I'm curious, is this power dynamic always just a boss bearing down on an employee?
Not at all. And honestly, that assumption is exactly where organizations miss the early warning signs.
Really? How so?
Well, yes, formal authority is the most common, a supervisor who controls your assignments, your PTO, or your performance reviews. But power asymmetry frequently comes from informal sources.
Like what?
Think about the person with the most tenure on the team who knows all the legacy systems, or the one with a highly specialized technical expertise that the company relies on to, just keep the servers running.
Oh, I see.
It can even be about network centrality.
Network centrality. You mean like the person who plays golf with the CEO? Or who happens to be best friends with the VP of sales?
Exactly. The untouchable employee. They hold social capital that acts as a shield.
That makes a lot of sense.
And the source material even points out that upward mobbing occurs.
Wait, upward mobbing. What is that?
That's when subordinates gang up to bully a supervisor.
Oh, wow. I wouldn't have even thought of that.
Yeah, if a group of employees has strong informal alliances and they decide to systematically undermine a new manager, maybe by forgetting to pass along vital information or missing deadlines on purpose, or publicly humiliating them in all-hands meetings.
Yikes.
That is workplace bullying, completely regardless of what the org chart says.
I hear you, but I have to push back on this a little.
Okay, go for it.
Because I think a lot of people listening might be struggling with the subjectivity here. The line still feels incredibly blurry to me.
It can feel that way, yes.
If you are in a high-stakes, fast-paced industry, where exactly is the line between a demanding boss who is aggressively pushing their team for excellence and a toxic, autocratic bully?
That's a really common question.
Because if my boss publicly criticizes a presentation I worked on for 3 weeks, that feels deeply personal and humiliating to me, even if they say they're just, focusing on the output.
Right.
How does an investigator untangle the victim's subjective hurt feelings from objective bullying?
That is the exact gray area that bullies thrive in. And it's a brilliant question. The distinction really comes down to the ultimate function of the behavior.
The function of it.
Okay, yeah. A demanding environment, even a highly stressful one, is focused on the work product. The standards are exhausting, the deadlines are brutal, but the critique, even if delivered bluntly, is about the output. Workplace bullying, however, actively and intentionally degrades a person's ability to actually do their job.
Okay, can you walk me through the mechanics of that?
Yeah.
How does a bully sabotage the work while pretending to just be demanding?
Sure. So a demanding boss tells you your presentation is flawed and demands you fix it by tomorrow.
Stressful but work-focused.
Exactly. A bully, on the other hand, removes your access to the data you need to fix the presentation and then publicly berates you in front of the department head for failing to fix it.
Oh, wow. That's a huge difference.
It involves persistent, unconstructive criticism, purposefully excluding someone from work-related activities, or setting impossible deadlines while actively withholding resources.
So they're setting you up to fail.
Yes. A demanding boss wants you to perform better so the team wins. A bully wants to undermine your professional credibility to maintain their own dominance.
That makes perfect sense. The bully is actually sabotaging the work itself just to keep the target off balance.
Exactly.
And yet, this is happening in 10 to 15% of careers. We have HR departments. We have employment laws. Why aren't companies stepping in and stopping this?
This brings us to the massive gap between corporate policy and actual practice. If zero-tolerance policies fail because HR is too far removed from the day-to-day reality, we have to look at why those policies exist in the first place.
Which is usually money, right?
While the financial cost of inaction is staggering, We're talking billions globally in lost productivity, healthcare expenditures, turnover of high performers, and litigation.
Billions.
Yeah. And yet, the primary defense mechanism companies use is the zero tolerance policy, which, as the data repeatedly shows, frequently fails.
Right. So a zero tolerance policy that HR never actually enforces is just sort of like a corporate scarecrow
A corporate scarecrow, exactly.
that relies entirely on the illusion of consequence. The first day it's up, the bad actors might be a little wary, but eventually they realize the scarecrow is completely hollow.
It doesn't actually do anything.
Right. It can't move. It never actually stops them. So they just start using it as a perch while they eat the crops anyway.
That's pretty vivid.
Once a bully figures out the policy is just performative, the policy actually empowers them.
That is a perfect metaphor. Because in many organizations, these policies are designed exclusively by legal teams to manage corporate liability, not to protect employee well-being.
It's just a shield for the company.
Exactly. A policy might look really robust on paper, but if an organization adopts it and then fails to independently investigate reports or refuses to discipline a higher-ranking perpetrator, the employees notice instantly.
They see right through it.
The scarecrow doesn't move. And the targets quickly recognize that reporting the behavior will do nothing but paint a massive target on their own backs.
So if the scarecrow doesn't work,
Mm-hmm.
what are the companies doing who actually get this right? How do you build a system that genuinely protects people?
The evidence points to integrating respectful behavior into the actual DNA of the company's performance metrics.
Like making it part of your job description.
Essentially, yes. For example, Johnson & Johnson revised their Credo Values framework to explicitly address psychological safety. But they didn't just write a nice policy and put it in a drawer.
What did they do?
They integrated bullying prevention into their leadership development and performance management. They literally evaluate managers on their ability to catch early warning signs of interpersonal conflict before it solidifies into bullying.
So it's not a standalone compliance checkbox you click through once a year on some training module.
Yeah, no.
It's an actual metric of whether or not you are good at your job.
Precisely. But where it gets really revolutionary is how companies handle the investigations themselves.
Oh.
Deloitte Australia realized that standard HR investigations were failing because they were treating these complex, deeply emotional situations as simple, linear policy violations.
Which they aren't.
Right. So they implemented a specialized investigation team trained in trauma-informed interviewing and psychological harm assessment.
Hold on, trauma-informed HR. How does that actually work in practice? Because standard HR is just, tell me the date, time, and exactly what was said.
Exactly. And that is why standard HR fails victims of bullying. Standard HR asks linear, fact-based questions. What time did he yell at you? Who else was in the room? What exact words were used?
Right, they want a police report.
But neurobiologically, prolonged trauma affects the brain's ability to sequence events linearly. When you are terrified of your boss, your brain is in survival mode. It's not filing away timestamps.
So if an HR rep asks a victim for a perfect chronological timeline and the victim gets confused or mixes up dates,
standard HR might flag them as an unreliable witness.
wow. They look at the inconsistency and just say, we can't substantiate this.
Yes, they throw the case out. But a trauma-informed interviewer understands the mechanics of memory. They know to ask sensory and experiential questions first.
Like what?
They ask things like, what do you remember feeling in the room when that meeting happened? Or, how did your body react when you saw that email?
Oh, that's completely different.
It is. And this approach unlocks the memory because trauma is stored sensorily. By changing the interview mechanics, Deloitte found that the quality of their investigations improved significantly.
That is incredible.
It allowed them to get to the actual truth, rather than just throwing out paces because the victim couldn't produce a perfect timeline.
That is absolutely brilliant. It changes the entire paradigm from, can you prove this in a corporate court, to, let's figure out what is fundamentally broken in this team dynamic.
Exactly.
But if HR is reforming how they investigate, we still have to talk about the people who see the bullying happen before HR ever gets involved.
You mean the bystander?
The bystanders, yes.
Bystander behavior is arguably the most significant influence on how severe bullying becomes. Bullying rarely happens in a vacuum. The collective silence of a team creates this shield of power around the perpetrator.
But let's bring you, the listener, into this thought experiment. Think about the highest performer at your current job. The untouchable one.
We all know one.
Right. The massive rainmaker, or the genius coder. If they started berating a junior designer in a Slack channel or quietly excluding someone from crucial meetings, is it really realistic to ask you to speak up?
It's a huge ask.
Would your HR department actually risk losing their top revenue generator to protect a junior employee? Be honest.
Yeah.
How do companies actually make it safe for a bystander to intervene without torpedoing their own career?
It is the ultimate stress test of an organization's culture. You cannot ask a junior employee to be a martyr.
Right.
Organizations have to completely reframe intervention. It cannot be seen as heroic risk-taking. It has to be established as standard professionalism.
How do you mandate that mechanically, though? Like, how do you make that a rule?
Well, you look at companies like Pixar Animation Studios. They utilize what they call brain trust principles.
I've heard of that for their movies.
Yes. Initially, this was an architectural framework for creative feedback. Like, how do you rigorously critique a movie without destroying the director's ego?
Right.
The brain trust separates the person from the problem. If someone pitches a bad idea, you attack the idea, not the person. But Pixar integrated this into their interpersonal conduct norms.
So how does critiquing a movie translate to stopping a bully?
By changing what is considered a threat. At Pixar, speaking up against bad behavior isn't framed as policing your colleagues or being an HR snitch.
It's not about being a tattletale.
No, it is explicitly framed as protecting the collective creative capacity of the team. If someone attacks a person rather than an idea, it is flagged as a threat to the creative process.
Oh, that's clever.
It really is. It lowers the social cost of speaking up because you aren't saying, you are hurting my feelings. You are saying you are violating the rules of the brain trust and hurting our ability to make a great movie.
That is fascinating. It takes the target off the individual victim and makes the bystander a defender of the team's shared goal.
Exactly.
But, as you pointed out, the real friction happens when the bully is a top earner. The brilliant jerk, right. The developer who writes the best code but screams at the QA team, or the surgeon who saves lives but throws scalpels at the nurses.
Right, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, how a company handles the brilliant jerk signals everything you need to know about their true values.
Absolutely.
When a company retains a toxic high performer, they are sending a megaphone broadcast to the entire company that productivity is valued over human collateral.
And that's exactly how you lose your best people. They see that, they realize the culture is a sham, and they leave. So how do you actually hold a brilliant jerk accountable?
Well, NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center actually tackled this head-on.
Yeah, NASA.
Yeah, NASA. Their internal research showed exactly what you'd expect. Conventional discipline was almost never applied to their senior, brilliant technical staff.
They were too valuable to punish.
Exactly. So they developed a respect-based discipline framework. It explicitly states in writing that technical brilliance does not excuse interpersonal abuse. In fact, it establishes that leadership responsibility increases with seniority.
Okay, but again, a piece of paper is just a piece of paper. The corporate scarecrow again. Did NASA give it teeth? What are the mechanics of this framework?
They give it serious teeth through a paper trail.
A paper trail.
Yes. If NASA Goddard wants to retain an employee who has a substantiated bullying claim against them, HR cannot just sweep it under the rug. It requires an executive review.
Oh, wow.
And the executive has to provide a formal written justification for keeping that toxic person, which goes prominently into the personnel files.
Wow. So they attach the executive's name to the risk.
Yes.
That forces accountability all the way up the chain. You can't just look the other way. You have to formally, legally own the decision to harbor a toxic employee.
Precisely.
If that employee gets sued later, your name is on the document saying you knew and kept them anyway.
Exactly. It forces leaders to choose between their ethical frameworks and their short-term performance metrics on the record. It makes the implicit protection of the brilliant jerk explicit, and most executives are not willing to take on that level of personal career risk for someone else's bad behavior.
So we know that waiting for the damage to be done is a terrible strategy. By the time someone files a formal complaint, the psychological harm is already deep. You know, the T-bone accident has already happened.
Right.
How do organizations shift from being reactive to being proactive? How do you stop the car before it enters the intersection?
You have to monitor the environment before the complaint is ever filed. Most bullying takes months or years to escalate.
It's that slow drip again.
Right. Telstra Corporation, which is a massive telecommunications company in Australia, they stopped waiting for complaints. They implemented quarterly pulse surveys.
Pulse surveys, like those massive 50-question annual employee engagement surveys where everyone just clicks agree to get it over with.
No, completely different mechanism. Annual surveys are too slow and way too broad. Pulse surveys are short, frequent, and specifically measure psychological safety.
So what kind of questions do they ask?
They ask things like, do you feel safe taking a risk on this team? Or are dissenting opinions respected in your team meetings?
Okay, very targeted.
If a specific team's psychological safety scores start dropping quarter over quarter, HR business partners step in immediately and conduct confidential interviews.
So they don't wait for a formal grievance. They are tracking the data to catch the interpersonal tension when it's just starting to fray.
Yes, they are looking for the behavioral precursors to bullying, and the final, arguably most crucial piece of proactive prevention is holding leadership accountable for their inaction.
Wait, so you're saying managers should be punished even if they aren't the ones doing the bullying?
Yes.
That feels like a massive liability shift. How do you objectively measure a manager's inaction without creating a witch hunt?
It is a massive liability shift, and it's absolutely necessary. When managers ignore reports, when they discourage complaints to, keep the peace, or when they protect perpetrators because they're high performers, they become structurally complicit.
They're part of the problem.
Exactly. The research argues strongly that performance evaluations for managers need to incorporate their responsiveness to conduct concerns.
So if the team is failing, the manager fails.
Right. If the pulse surveys show a toxic environment and the manager has done nothing to intervene, that manager's performance rating drops. If you fail to investigate or report mistreatment that you see happening, you face proportionate consequences because maintaining a safe environment is the core function of management.
So what does this all mean? If we step back and look at this entire stack of research, all these structural failures and innovative solutions, what is the core takeaway for you listening right now?
The core takeaway is that a written policy is not accountability. Real accountability means the consequences must match the harm inflicted, completely regardless of the perpetrator's value to the bottom line.
It doesn't matter how much money they make the company.
Not at all. Furthermore, we have to stop thinking that offering the victim some counseling is enough. Supporting targets is crucial, offering flexible work, providing trauma-informed care. But that support must happen alongside punishing the bullies, not instead of it.
Right.
Compassion for the target does not cancel out the need for consequences for the perpetrator.
It goes right back to the T-bone accident. Giving the victim a ride to the hospital in an ambulance is great. It's necessary.
Yeah.
But if you don't take the at-fault driver's license away, they are just going to hit someone else tomorrow.
This raises an important question, and it is something the research points toward as the future of workplace culture.
What's that?
Well, we know that active bullies evade consequences today because the system protects them. But as companies like NASA and Telstra begin tracking managerial inaction, and as the science of psychological safety becomes standard corporate governance, we have to look closely at the bystanders.
Yeah, we really do. Where does the bystander fit into the future of corporate accountability?
Imagine a future where silence becomes a fireable offense.
Wow.
If you see a colleague being quietly frozen out of a project or publicly demeaned in a meeting, and you choose to look the other way simply to protect your own peace.
Which a lot of people do.
They do. But could the corporate policies of tomorrow classify you not just as a passive bystander, but as a punishable accomplice?
That is a chilling thought. If the corporate scarecrow finally comes to life, it might not just come for the bullies. It might come for everyone who stood by and watched the field get destroyed.
It's definitely something to chew on.
It's a lot to think about, whether you're leading a team or just trying to navigate your own career. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. We'll see you next time.